Welcome everyone to today's webinar on self-care and thriving for educators during a public health crisis. This webinar is sponsored by the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, housed at Rutgers School of Health Professions, Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. My name's Ann Murphy, and I'm the co-director of this center and will be facilitating the webinar today. Next slide, please. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of the behavioral health and other related workforces to deliver evidence-based and empirically supported practices to individuals with mental illnesses. We've also received supplemental funding to focus our services additionally on school mental health and educators. Please visit the MHTTC Network website for additional information at mhttcnetwork.org. And there you can click on Find Your Center and then go to Northeast and Caribbean to get to our individual center's homepage. Next slide. We also have an email listserv, and we would appreciate you following this link and subscribing to receive notices about our upcoming activities. By subscribing to receive our emails, you'll find out about all of our activities and the products that we're developing as quickly as they're available. Next slide. Before we begin the webinar, I wanted to quickly review some housekeeping items. We ask that you complete the survey that you will receive via email following this webinar. We value your feedback and we use it to improve our activities and inform future activities that we develop. The surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to the completion of these surveys. So we thank you in advance for your feedback and for completing the very brief survey that you receive. Next slide. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website following its completion. Lastly, this webinar will be interactive. On your screen, you have a taskbar with buttons that say Q&A and chat. Please use the Q&A or chat feature to ask our presenter questions throughout the presentation. I'll collect your questions as we go, and I'll ask them of the presenter during the Q&A time towards the end of the presentation. During the webinar, our presenter may also pose questions to you, and we encourage you to use the chat feature to answer these questions, to engage with our presenter, and to engage with each other. Next slide. Excellent. So now we'll go ahead and begin our webinar. We're happy to have PJ Wanger with us today. PJ has 20 years of experience in the field of mental health. She's worked in a variety of settings, including psychiatric screening, inpatient children's and adult psychiatric units, in-home counseling, residential treatment, schools, and private practice. She worked as a school counselor for 15 years, and she's the lead trauma responder for Mercer County, New Jersey, as well as the state and national trauma responder, having responded to both the 9/11 events and Hurricane Sandy. We're happy to have her with us today, and I will turn it over to you, PJ, to begin the webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Welcome, everyone. I'm really happy to have you all here. I'd like to start today with just a 3-minute mindful meditation. So I'd like you all to join me as we just take a few moments to relax and
Mindful
just
breathing.
be here.
Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your attention to the touch of your body on your seat. Feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Make sure that your back is straight and that you're comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. While you're breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face, your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tightness in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Notice what it feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down through your throat, filling your lungs, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. And just allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. As you inhale, maybe your breath feels cool. And as you exhale, maybe it feels a little warmer. When your mind wanders, or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head, and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the feeling of your breath and allow thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
So we just take 3 minutes to kind of relax. I'm being told by lots of educators they don't feel like they have a lot of space and time to relax. So hopefully that 3-minute meditation helped us just to center ourselves and come back to our place here. So our objectives for today's webinar, I'm going to go over briefly. We recognize that COVID-19 is changing our world as well as significantly changing our educational system, both in terms of how we teach, how our children learn, and how the impact of homeschooling and our virtual schooling is having on our parents and families. Because COVID-19 and its impact in our lives, we need to pay attention and recognize not only our own distress level, but that as well as our students. We hope to promote wellness, which is really taking care of ourselves and encouraging those around us to take care of themselves. If we think about children, especially teens, self-care in the typical world is not a priority. However, in these times, it is imperative. We also want to recognize mental health issues in our students, which is especially a challenge when they are not sitting in front of us every day and we're not seeing the changes that they go through from a day-to-day basis. We're going to attempt to help our families with the distance learning that we're now experiencing and also as well as the social isolation. So in the face of COVID-19, it has changed the face of our world in multiple ways. These are just some of the feedback that I'm receiving from contact with educators, students, and parents about things that they're experiencing very differently during this time. In terms of education, new to all of us is doing education completely remotely. Students having issues with what they perceive as increased amounts of work, teachers attempting to provide the same quality of education, teachers having decreased contact with their students. These are some of the struggles that we're hearing from the educational staff. Also struggling with platforms. The technology varies so dramatically from school to school. Also technology that is overloaded, so fails at times. And then schools who have the experience that their students don't have access to technology. The availability for students. How often are we available? When school's in session, students have access to us often. Even when we might be on a duty, a student can stop and ask you a question, or in the morning, they can stop by your room. Now that's not available to them. So what is the appropriate amount of time to be available for our students? Social distancing. This is the most difficult aspect for our children. While we thought most of their communication happened in social media, we are now discovering, or should I say they are discovering, that personal contact is so important. It is especially difficult when all of their friends are not exercising the same isolation parameters. So for instance, there is a community where in the apartment complex, parents are allowing their teenagers to congregate once a day for an hour outside of the apartment building. And some of the other friends of those teenagers are frustrated because they're seeing the pictures posted on Snapchat and Instagram, and they're frustrated they can't be with them. And then we also have grief around cancellations of rites of passage for students. So students, especially my seniors and freshmen, appear to be having the most difficulty. Freshmen who were just getting adjusted and feeling comfortable when all of this happened. And then seniors who are missing out on significant events like proms, plays, graduation prep, and ceremonies. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to just poll the audience and find out what are the biggest challenges during this time that you're facing. And I'd like you to put that answer in the chat box and let me know. So I'm going to give you a few minutes just to respond to that question. What are the biggest challenges that you are facing during this time?
Okay, PJ, we've got some answers coming in. So we've got concerns about reaching high-risk students and staying connected to them. How to address students with special needs. The struggle of sort of wanting to help everybody and not really being able to, also being the rock for other people, but you know, challenges with addressing their own wellness, feeling overloaded with all of the technology, not being able to disconnect, missing the collaboration with coworkers, feeling like they're out on their own. Let's see, other things. Oh, not knowing whether this adjustment is you know, temporary and short term, or whether it's more permanent and long term, and how to address that. School counseling and confidentiality. Trouble with students not logging in, converting materials to distance formatting, having to multitask, being a parent and a teacher at the same time, looking for assignments to support social and emotional wellness, and another one, creating that work-life balance. So those are some that are coming in right now.
Okay, well, thank you for all those responses, and hopefully I will address most of your concerns throughout my presentation. However, if I do not, I will attempt to answer your concerns via email or during the question and answer period. So we're going to start now. One of the important things is we really need to pay attention to our own level of distress. And sometimes we miss the signs and symptoms of our own distress level. So I'm just going to go over some of these. Sometimes we are feeling helpless and hopeless. Everyone is doing this differently. I was in contact with a young person who's working 2 days as an EMT in a hospital, and she overheard one of the doctors say, "We're just waiting to get this." And of course, this created anxiety for her, and she was feeling very hopeless about the situation. And what I try to do is remain hopeful. So what I said is we really need to think like Maya Angelou, who once said, you know, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And I think we really need to remember that when we are thinking about how this situation is affecting us, so that we don't lose our hope, because as educators, we're really holding the hope for ourselves as well as our students and their families sometimes. Hypervigilance, being extremely sensitive to our surroundings, being on alert, looking for danger. We're seeing this in a lot of the communities where people are concerned about either catching the COVID or being exposed to it. Reduce creativity. When we are stressed out, we sometimes can't come up with creative methods. And you're going to hear me say often through the presentation in terms of what we can do for students and children is that we really need to be more creative now in this new remote world. Minimizing or dismissing others' concerns. We need to be careful we don't do this to our families, the children that we're working with, our partners, the students. I had a couple that the spouse was working from home and the mother was laid off, and the father felt like he had a harder job even though mom was doing teaching and education and cooking and keeping the house together. So we need to be careful that we are acknowledging everybody's role. Chronic exhaustion and fatigue. As teachers, usually we're getting up very early in the morning to make it for, class. And although we're not doing that commute, we are, sometimes feeling tired, even though we're getting more sleep. Inability to listen. Listening is a skill that I find that causes a lot of problems for parents and children at times. And again, I tell people it's not about fixing or solving what the child is concerned about. It's really just about hearing them, listening to the words that they're saying. Sometimes children and teenagers just want us to hear them. They want to vent. They just don't want answers. A sense that one can never do enough. I feel like teachers feel like this regularly with all the demands that are put upon them. So in this remote world, sometimes it feels like that demand is going up. Being cynical and angry or sarcastic, this is not going to get better. We sort of get down into that negative cycle. Increased addictions. We are aware that the purchase of alcohol went up 55% since the week ending March 21st, and online sales are up 243%. So we need to be careful that we don't resort to using substances as a way to cope. Fear or guilt. Fear is a little rampant right now. It's easier to go here, especially when you're watching the news. The news can be overwhelming. I like to remember what Franklin D. Roosevelt said when he said, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear. And I think we need to remember that because it's easy to go to the fear place right now. Also feeling guilty about what I'm doing or not doing. And it's really about having compassion for ourselves and others, which kind of leads me into that last box of inability to empathize. Sometimes, we really, during this time when we're stressed out, we're unable to empathize with those around us. So how this manifests in our lives, these are some of the things that we need to watch for. And, I tell people to pay attention to what our loved ones and our family and our friends are saying around us. So sometimes it looks like increased arguing with others. Sometimes, students are saying to me, my parents are always fighting right now, or they're always yelling at me. So we need to really pay attention to that. And if they say that to us, we need to listen to them. Decreased performance in your job. Some people feel that they're working really hard, and some people feel like they're not working hard enough. And it's hard to gauge in this remote world, especially when some schools are doing half days, some schools are doing full days. Being afraid to take time away from your daily activities. And we really need to do that. I'm going to talk about self-care later on in the presentation. Increased isolation. We are already on an isolation, social isolation, but when we are isolating even more in our homes and not interacting with others, we need to be watchful of that. Increased addictive behaviors I already addressed. Thinking the worst in every situation. It's very easy to go there in this time, and we really need to, again, be the hope and the light for some of our students and families, as well as ourselves. Sleep and appetite disturbances. Some of my teens are having trouble, and some of my parents, because they're staying up later or they're eating all day, or, so we need to pay attention to what's changed there. Emotional outbursts. Sometimes we get so frustrated, we just break down and cry, or we're yelling. So we need to pay attention to that in ourselves. Losing patience with others around us. Sometimes that's easy when we're teaching and we're trying to do the schooling with our children at home, and we're trying to balance, our own self-care, and forgetting why you do the job, forgetting why you got up every day and went and became a teacher. So we need to, these are ways that it kind of looks like in our lives. So one of the things I think it's important is to really find out how stressed we really are. And the tool that I'm going to use is the Perceived Stress Scale. It's a 10-question inventory. It's really simple. It's easy to score. I'm not going to ask you to report any of your answers to me. I can tell you that I do myself take this PSS periodically just to gauge where I'm at, because sometimes we don't really recognize what's happening with ourselves. So I can tell you that when I did a presentation a couple months ago and I did this PSS while everybody else was doing it, my score was really low. And I took it recently and my score has gone up. So I really needed to stop and take a moment and think about what I was going to do to help my stress level. So I'm just going to go through, we're just going to go through the questions. There are only 10. And I'm just going to ask you to answer them. You're going to self-score. You're not going to report the score back to me. So the questions are answered with one of the following alternatives. 0, never; 1, almost never; 2, sometimes; 3, fairly often; 4, very often. And I tell people just to read the question and answer it as quickly as you can. Whatever that first thought is that comes to your mind, that's the answer. Don't put a whole lot of thought into these questions. Just answer them with the first thought that comes to your mind. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to answer the first 7 questions, and then we'll go on to the last 3. So if you can just put in the chat box when you're done so that we can gauge when most of the people are done and we can move on, that would be helpful.
Okay, PJ, looks like some people are indicating that they're done.
Okay, we're going to go on to the last 3. And then again, if you can just indicate in the chat box when you're done, we'll move on.
Looks like people are finishing up.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the scoring. Again, it's really easy. You just reverse your scores for questions 4, 5, 7, and 8. Score them as indicated, those 4 questions, and then you just add up your total scores. And again, feel free to use this with your students, your friends, and your family. It's really interesting to see where everybody's score comes up. So, and again, I do this periodically for myself, and I encourage counselors that I work with and educators that I work with to do it periodically just to gauge where you are. So again, no report back to me, but if your score is 0 to 13, that would be considered low stress. If it's 14 to 26, it's considered moderate stress. And if it's over 27, that would be considered that you perceive that you have a high level of stress. And then we need to do some things to work on that. So I'm going to move on into how we provide wellness strategies for ourselves and those people around us. And the way we do that is really, we call it the ABCs of wellness. And the ABCs are awareness, balance, and connection. Those are the 3 most important areas for us to maintain a well-balanced life. And so the first one is awareness. And awareness is about being aware and present of what you're doing while you're doing it. So maintaining focus on the task at hand and being aware of what thoughts come to mind when you lose focus on the present. And these are some of the strategies to make us more aware of ourselves. You know, practicing mindfulness. We did the 3-minute meditation that just kind of brings us back to ourselves and allows us just to have a moment where we just concentrate on us and not on everything that's happening around us. Keeping a journal. I encourage people to keep a journal of this time. Some of the teenagers are also keeping journals because they're telling me they're going to write books. Reading books, watching movies, writing down goals and plans and priorities. This is a really important one for those of us who are working at home, kind of writing down what is the priority today, and then writing down some goals. What do I want to do with this time? And plans. What do I want to do when COVID-19 social isolation is lifted? So again, these are things to keep us in that hope place and really be aware of what we're thinking now. Gratitude practice. This gratitude practice is something that I recommend often to my clients, to friends and family, to people around me. And I think it's really important right now to stay in a gratitude place. You know, while this social isolation is really stressful, there are some positive things that are coming out of it. I had a teenager the other day tell me that one of the good things that she likes about it, even though she'd much rather be back at school in her classrooms with her teacher, she said, I get to eat dinner with my dad every night. And when I'm in school and he's working, we never see him. So again, something to be grateful for, a very little thing. And then perform a daily reflection. You can go online and look up daily reflections. We're going to give you some recommendations for some apps that will do the same, just having us reflect on something else other than, you know, sometimes the doom and gloom that we get from all the media. The second part of the ABC of wellness is balancing in our lives, providing balance. And that means not just working. So a lot of people who are working from home feel like they're working harder and longer because they just never leave the office that they're working in. And we really need to engage in some other activities that balance. So we have to have work, rest, play. We need to include all of that. Playing is a really important activity. There's a lot of things that we can't do right now, like play basketball or, you know, be at the park with everybody, but there's a lot of things that we can do. So being physical is really important. Walking, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, you know, staying hydrated. Sometimes when we're working all day, we're not drinking, we're not staying hydrated, we're not nourishing our bodies, and we need to remember to do that. It's a very important thing. And avoiding information overload from the news. I spoke to this before. I recommend people have about an hour of the news a day and then, you know, go about the rest of your day, working, playing, resting, spending some time alone, but don't have hours and hours of the news. It can be really stressful, and certainly don't do it before you go to bed. Reading a book, watching a movie. There's lots of virtual tours of museums. The zoos are posting tours of what the animals are doing, because even though the zoos are closed, the animals are still there and they're still being taken care of. And they're behaving very differently without hundreds of people looking at them. So they're videotaping that and putting that online, available to you. Checking out your local library for free access to audiobooks, movies, and ebooks. And then a lot of the local gyms are doing demand classes or using YouTube or online to provide their exercise service. So if you belong to a gym, check out what your gym is doing to help yourself stay physical. And then the last part is connection, which is probably the hardest part in this isolation, social distancing that we're experiencing right now. But really maintaining a network of social support means connecting meaningfully with people you like and care about. And this includes sharing your experience about being able to have open conversations with others. There's lots of people doing Zoom parties and meetups in some of these resources that you see here on our slide, you know, using audio, video, email. I was on a webinar this morning, and one of the trainers said that she was trying to plan her daughter's 5th birthday. And so what she did is she asked for everybody to send her notes and messages and videos about, you know, their well wishes. And she got all of this stuff online, and it was a very happy moment for her daughter. So again, we just need to be a little creative about how we're doing this differently. One of the schools had the educators get in a bus and do a drive-by in their students' neighborhoods, just to see their face and say hi, social distancing maintained, but at least to just make that connection. I have seen people who have porches and decks, having conversations from their deck to the street below. Again, social distance, but we're still able to see and interact with people. There's lots of group activities online we can do. The Netflix party is very popular. We can watch movies together. The students are using Anchill and Cosme. They seem to be having a good time with that. There's also, Google Meets. So again, it's being creative about how we're staying connected. Even if we make a plan, again, that's that plan, to call one of our friends once a week and just have a conversation about how everybody's doing. So here's some of the resources for awareness. These are apps that you can find online, and many of them are free. And some of them are free, but then they have, if you go up levels, you can have a paid subscription. So I really encourage people to look at these, explore them, see which one works for you. I personally have 365 Gratitude on my phone. It gives you a daily reflection every day, and you can also, it gives you a question and you can write in the answer, and it kind of tracks how you're feeling. So I really enjoy that one if you need that. And sometimes you can share that with your students. If you're a teacher, you can share that gratitude question every day with your students as a way to start class, or as an email to get them thinking about something different than that they're locked at home. The mood notes tracks your mood over time. It avoids some common thinking traps. And my students who are on the spectrum are saying that that's really helpful for them, as well as my students who have anxiety. So again, these are some resources that you can check out, explore, find out which one works for you. 10% Happier is free, and it's kind of like daily affirmations. So again, these are some things just to make us aware of what we're doing, how our mood is, how we're feeling. So again, I would encourage you, you're going to get the PowerPoint, so these will all be on there. In terms of balance resources, balance is really about getting that time in to play and rest and take care of ourselves. And so here are some of the apps that you can download or tap into to give yourself some of that balance, so that you're not working all day long. Because sometimes we can get into a work headspace, and then by the time we know it, it's 8-9 hours later and we haven't eaten or drank all day, and that's not a good thing. Smiling Mind, Calm app is free. I have a lot of my students and clients and friends and family who are on that. Smiling Mind addresses many things like stress and sleep attention, or stress and sleep, attention and concentration, well-being, does some relationship well-being. They do some performance and sports sort of activities and mindful eating. They also do some meditation and relaxation sounds. So Smiling Mind kind of incorporates all of it. Virtual Hope Box, it's tools to help with coping, relaxing, distracting, and having some positive thinking. And then 5-minute yoga is really about relaxation. And I know lots of people are like, I don't do yoga, but it might be time to take up something new to kind of balance what is happening around us. So connection resources, we talked about some of these, and these are some of the ones that are popular, people are using. Again, the Netflix party. There's a bunch for watching movies, Watch Together, My Circle TV, Sync Play, others for people to get together. One of the people I work with is doing game night with her friends and family. So again, that's a little challenging, but we have to be creative. Some games will work when we do that, some will not. So these are some resources for us to stay connected. And again, you'll get the PowerPoint, so you'll have them. So additional stressors for educators. These are some things that we want to talk about, and hopefully this will target some of the things that you're learning or you're experiencing now. So being accessible. So I have educators who say, the students want access to them all the time, and how do we balance that? And then I have students who say the educators aren't accessible. So what I find is an easy strategy is to set up office hours and be careful to stick to them. and make office hours that are flexible for you and your students. So some of my educators are finding that if they have an office hour later in the day, it works a little better. We have a lot of parents who are struggling, sending us massive amounts of emails or phone calls or things like that. And so a suggestion is to have a parent hour, once a week. Maybe, I know we're not fond of working in the evenings when you're an educator, but having a parent hour where parents can ask you questions and kind of interface with you is really helpful and may decrease that bombardment of emails. Struggling with technology. I think everybody is struggling with this. I know a lot of the schools were on Zoom initially, and now they have gone to either the Microsoft platform or the Google platform for security reasons. But all the technology people in the districts are working overtime, so certainly hook up with them. But also tap into some of the online sites that are specific for teachers to help with technology. So I've offered you 3 of them. All the resources are free. They can help you with some of the technology for education, for ideas and tools that you can use for learning. So these are 3 that I have found to be pretty accessible and also very helpful. Another stressor, juggling work and home. I cannot tell you how often in the last several weeks with even my private clients and educators that I'm working with and people that I'm talking to, that I'm really saying you have to establish a schedule for you and your children. For the little ones, it's helpful for you to establish the schedule. For the adolescents and the teenagers, it's helpful for them to be a part of it. And it doesn't have to be 24/7. It doesn't have to be exact. From 9 to 10, we're going to do this. But it has to include that time for work and play and rest and alone time for you to just decompress and say, I don't want to talk to anybody for the next hour. And this is mommy's time. I had one educator who says they have a green and a red light sticker on their doors now. And if it's green, that means students and children can come in. And if it's yellow, they can't. Or if it's red, they can't. So again, working some kind of system out at home so that people know when you're available and when you're not. And then definitely engaging in some time with friends. I heard people say they don't feel connected with some coworkers. There's a lot of resources out there where educators are connecting with each other. We had a mutual support call for educators the other day, and we had educators on from Florida and South Carolina and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, who were all talking together and exchanging ideas. So those are helpful things as well. Dealing with stressed students and children. Helping students to manage time and be successful. A lot of the teenagers are saying they're sleeping through the day and up all night, depending on what the demands are for school. So again, it's helping them to develop a schedule and manage their time. And then also providing students with some of the links that we just went over for relaxation and meditation. They're all using their phones, and some of those things they can do together. So you can walk students through some of those apps, or you can make an assignment to do it together. Getting outside, I encourage everyone to get outside in the sun when it's nice. You can maintain social distance, but you can at least get outside and do something that's not sitting in your house. And children are getting very stir crazy. So I know that the adults are as well. I myself have to get outside every day. It just helps me mentally. And then engage in some new activities. So I gave you a resource there that has some really simple and creative activities for children and adolescents that we might not think of. And a lot of those activities don't require a lot of resources. So again, access that site. It has a lot of information. Feeling isolated. Our students, again, are feeling very isolated. So are some of our educators. They're feeling not connected. We're feeling not connected. Again, it's setting up chats on a regular basis, adopting a new hobby or craft, and working as a group. Some of the local craft stores have online groups to learn new things, and they're doing that as like a Zoom classroom. So you can meet other people and do something that's different out of your ordinary. Journaling, again, I'm always a fan of journaling. Adopting a rescue animal. I understand the rescue organizations are doing really well right now because people are adopting animals, which keeps you distracted and also keeps you moving because you have to take care of them. And then again, creating futuristic plans. I was on a webinar this morning where they were talking about what is on our bucket list and what does that look like after the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. And dealing with our own feelings of depression or anxiety. It's really easy for us to kind of go down what I call the negative cycle and become depressed during this time, thinking things won't get better. You know, again, sometimes when you listen to the news, but it's really recognizing that I may be having some depression, I may be having some anxiety about this. There are lots of mental health hotlines. We're going to give you some resources at the end of this PowerPoint or webinar that you will have access to. So please look into some of those. Develop some kind of regular body work practice. Even if you're not a yoga person, there is a 3-day yoga challenge on YouTube that's very easy, very minimal. Down Dog Yoga app is free till July. So again, if you're not a yoga person, if you've never tried it, might be a time to do that. Utilize the links for relaxation, getting outside, journaling, having a gratitude practice. These are all strategies that we use to help with depression or anxiety. And then of course, if it's really getting to a point where you need some professional intervention, there are lots of counselors who are doing telehealth, mental health right now. So please access one of them. Grief around cancellation or rites of passage for students. I hear a lot about this from educators who are missing events. I mean, as educators, there are things that you enjoyed going to and being involved with the students. The students are feeling that as well. So it's really about letting the students vent and express how they feel. You know, it's not helpful to tell students it's going to be okay because we don't really know how it's going to roll out down the road. But putting things in a different time frame, you know, things are different now, but we can still do this, you know, and again, that's where that creative piece comes in. And I tell educators to challenge your students and challenge yourselves about how you can be creative around some of these things that they are missing. I have students come up with the ideas of how they're going to do these things when social distancing is over. So I have one school where the senior prom has already been canceled. And what they have already decided to do is that during the break in college next year, during the holiday break, they're going to create a prom. And they're making all kinds of plans to do that. So hopefully, you know, social distancing will be lifted and they'll be able to do that. But have them come up with things that they will do when social distancing is over, their own bucket list and yours. Offer hope that, you know, everyone is missing things and that there will be times to do what I call do-overs. We'll be able to do some do-overs. They might not look like what they've looked like in the past, but we'll have some opportunities. So identifying mental health issues in our students. This is one of the concerns I hear from educators all the time because they don't see their students every day, or there are students who are not accessing the Google Classrooms or the Zoom sessions, and they're not seeing them. But I tell educators and providers, listen carefully to what the students are saying. They're not necessarily going to say, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, you know, I'm feeling isolated, but they are going to say things like, I am overwhelmed, I can't take this anymore, I'm freaking out, I'm panicking, I'm on edge. You know, ask them to describe what it is they are saying. If they say, I can't take this anymore, what does that mean? If they're saying, I'm freaking out, okay, what are you freaking out about? Ask them those questions because they might be using different language than what they mean. And, you know, we really need to be hearing them and understanding where they're at. And again, dispelling rumors about what the COVID-19 is about these days. There are lots of rumors out there. There's lots of doom and gloom messages. Kids are getting them, they're hearing them, they're on YouTube. So what I tell teachers and educators to do is to do that educational piece. The Center for Disease Control has the facts. We can go there as a class, you can go there yourselves and find out answers. So again, it's really having the accurate information. How to help from a distance, you know, addressing isolation. Asking students who their supports are and who they can contact. We do that thing when the first day of school and you find out information about students and you ask them questions. This is kind of like first day of school. It's first day of remote learning. So ask them, who their supports are, who they can contact, who is somebody they can talk to face that they live with. Some students who are only children or don't have access to a lot of resources may need that kind of identification help. Provide students with the helplines and hotlines for their use. Make sure that those are available. If you have websites, teachers, I encourage you to put those helplines right on those websites for the students. You will get some of those at the end of this webinar. When you're doing virtual classrooms, allow 10 minutes or 15 minutes before the lesson or after for the students to socialize and just kind of listen in to what they're saying. Or create a social hour in which you sit in with the students, and it's not about schoolwork, it's not about what their projects are, it's not about their grades, it's about how's everybody doing, what are you feeling, what are you experiencing. That's really important if you want to connect with your students. For students that teachers are saying to me they're losing, they're not signing into the classroom or they haven't seen or heard from them, create a check-in or a buddy system among the group of students. The students are in contact with each other, so use that to your advantage to pull in those kids who are disconnecting. Create activities for students that promote hope. Students are all about challenges, so let's be creative as teachers and give them challenges. They've had some negative ones in the past, let's do some positive ones. So one of my schools is having every student plant something, a tree, a flower, a vegetable, and they're posting pictures of how their plant is doing. One of the student groups is knitting scarves for the homeless for the winter, and so they're posting what they're doing. There's a lot of ideas on Pinterest for things that students can do and how you can challenge them to be focused on something else other than the social isolation. And then have the students write a letter to their future selves. We often do that in grade school where we do the time capsules and they bury them or they send letters, but this is a really good thing to do for students now, both little and big. And then here's some of the helplines and hotlines that we recommend. You're going to get a resource page because you participated in the webinar of lots of resources that we've compiled through the MHTTC to help educators and providers with multiple resources. So please look at these and also look at them when you get them and pass these resources on to your teenagers. And then helping families from a distance. Signs that families are in distress. When a parent or family is sending you multiple emails, you're feeling very bombarded by that and annoyed by that, and they're feeling very distressed. So understand that it's not that they're angry at you or, you know, it's not about you, it's just they're in distress. So again, try not to lose your patience with them. Most parents have never been teachers, they rely on you heavily. So asking them to work from home and be teachers has been very stressful. Some of you are experiencing that yourselves, even as you work from home. Reports from your students that they're losing patience with the amount of schoolwork or the virtual platform. And again, we need to be a little flexible in this time. I know that some of the schools are going to pass fail for grades, or they're giving students different options of how you can do the work in different formats. Increased frustration with virtual school demands. I would give parents some of those resources for virtual schools and help. Parents aren't teachers, so if you have the resources like Khan Academy, some of those teaching sites that can help the students in lieu of the parents, those are really good to hand out to parents. And again, on our resource page, some of those are listed. Inability for parents to get students to complete their work. Sometimes that's been difficult before remote learning, so now it's even harder. So again, if we can just encourage students to do like an incentive basis. So one of my teachers said to the students, if you do all the work that I'm asking, you will definitely get a B, but you have to do all the work. And that was enough incentive for the students to do it. Or have the students work in groups. That's also helpful and keeps them connected as well. And parents having difficulty organizing the work for their children or not understanding tasks, again, provide some of those resources for some of the online learning. I like Khan Academy, so it's the one that I recommend a lot because it's just easy and there's videos so the parents can kind of set the students up with whatever subject it is and they can watch the videos. And then if you can, on websites, as much as you can, provide explanations for the tasks that you want the students to do. How to help parents. It's really about assuring parents that we are all in this together and we're figuring these things out. So what I try to have educators stay away from is the black and white, because we really don't know the black and white. Things are fluctuating all the time. Be patient with parents. They're having challenges with technology or don't have access to technology. So I know one of the schools took a bus out with a hotspot, and then the kids could link into the hotspot. Not everybody has that option, but there are certainly some resources out there for technology. Some of the local groups are providing technology access for students. Again, offer them online video for parenting during this time. Child Mind is a website that has psychologists available from, I believe, 10 to 4:30 every day, so they can kind of call in and ask questions. Websites for their children to learn, again, Khan Academy, Course Hero. These are Smart Tutor. These are some things that are out there that the kids can use to help themselves and also to help parents. And again, I can't tell you how important having that parent forum one day a week eliminates some stress for you and eliminates some stress for them, just to be able to have a conversation with you. And then be flexible when you're talking to parents. They're in the same stress as you are, being isolated at home. And so new activities to do with kids, supporting students to do new things. I hear all the time students are bored. They don't know what to do. And again, here's my idea of making a challenge to find a new hobby that creates a product, and they can do anything they want. I'm having students create online photo albums of their friends from the past or photos that they're sending to each other. Having children create pandemic first aid kits. It's very amusing what children think you need to have during a pandemic. So that has been a really fun activity for some of our kids. Encouraging children to find a pen pal. Children all over the world are experiencing some type of social isolation and social distancing. So this is a really good thing for kids to be able to A, make a new friend, and B, know that they're not the only person in the world who's experiencing this. And then again, have children do a bucket list for after COVID-19. And I encourage the teachers to do a bucket list for after COVID-19. So we have something to look forward to. Again, we're kind of the hope deliverers for our students and families right now. And then, so the last thing I want to ask is one thing that you can do in the next week to help yourself, giving you a bunch of ideas. So what is one thing that you're willing to commit to helping yourself, your parents, or your students? And I encourage you to use the chat box just to share something that you can do to support wellness. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to see what ideas everybody has about the one thing, only one thing. We don't need to tackle everything at once, one step at a time. One thing that you're going to do next week to help yourself, your parents, or your students.
So we've got a couple things coming in. So we've got trying to take more time for myself, turning off the computer, walking away from it, taking a walk outside. Those are some of the things we have coming in that people can do to try and improve their self-care.
Yeah, and we have to be really careful about that computer burnout. People who are sitting in front of the screens all day. That came up in our mutual support call the other day. What do we do about computer burnout? So again, getting up and walking away from that computer is a really good thing to do. So question and answers. So does anybody have any questions that maybe I can address? Or if I don't have the answers, I will certainly find an answer and get back to you via email, but opportunity for you to ask questions.
I think we have time for just a couple questions. So one of the questions is, as you've been talking about, there's so many, different things that people are being, asked to do and needing to try to address. So amid all the activities and tasks that people are they're being pulled to do, how do you prioritize taking care of yourself? So it's easy to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try that, but how do you actually try to make that happen?
So prioritizing that is really, again, I'm back to, some kind of schedule. So if what I recommend is that you have a time that you set aside for yourself, however that looks. Maybe it will look from 7 to 8 or from 3 to 4, where you go in your bedroom and put a sign on the door. Mommy or daddy is out to lunch for 40 minutes, do not disturb, or whether you take yourself and get in the car and take a drive, or whether you walk outside. Again, maintaining social distancing, but certainly scheduling that time for yourself. People are feeling very overwhelmed and tired and stressed. And the only way that we can take care of ourselves is if we build in that time. And if you think about it, we so very rarely do that on a regular basis. It's more important to do it now because we don't have some of those other distractions and things that are available to us. So again, it's scheduling that time and really closing the door and shutting off and doing whatever it is that makes you feel rejuvenated, either taking a bath or taking a nap or taking a walk or reading a book or something that is just your time. And I encourage you to let all your family members know this is the time, and also to encourage them to have their own time as well. So is there another question, Anne?
Wonderful. Yep. So the other question is, there's so many resources being shared. People are getting sort of inundated with opportunities, but how do we keep from feeling overwhelmed by all the resources?
So I think the way to keep from being overwhelmed about all the resources is to really prioritize what is the resource that you need at this moment. So you're going to be bombarded with resources for learning and resources that are free and resources for teaching and resources for self-care and resources for charities that are going on or things you can do. And I think you have to, again, that's being aware. What the first of the ABCs, being aware of what it is that I need. And if what I need right now is learning resources, then I'm just going to look at the resources that are for learning. If what I need right now is to de-stress, then I'm just going to look at those resources around stress management. So again, it's kind of filtering through those resources, just what you need, and not really paying attention to the rest. Because if we look at all of them, it can be very overwhelming. So it's really, again, being aware of what it is that I need to do my wellness, my ABCs, and looking at that piece.
Excellent. Thank you, PJ. So I think we're just about out of time right now. So I wanted to thank all the participants who have been with us today, and also especially PJ to thank you for the webinar. And we wish everybody wellness and some quiet time, some peace, and we thank you for being with us.
I'd like to thank everybody, and stay safe and never lose hope, and know that we're all going to come out of this on the other side. Thank you and have a good day.